right, here we go. Episode number 3. Before we get rolling, I got a couple of guests already in the green room, so that's awesome. Before we get rolling, all the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, share, notification bell, retweet, help share this out there. This is the second episode in a row on 3D printing, so looking to take a little bit of a deeper dive in terms of 3D printing. And for anyone who is unfamiliar with the program, this is Ungovernable. My name is Matt. We talk about skills, tips, tricks, solutions, resources for you to be able to not necessarily opt out from the system, but regain your leverage so that you don't necessarily have to deal with centralized control of industries or governmental control of certain aspects of your life. You can actually live separate from that if you feel like you need to. And I would definitely advise that you exercise those abilities if you do feel the need to. So definitely looking forward to talking to our guests this evening. Scott's already chiming in. He's stoked for this episode because we have 3 awesome guests, 2 of which are already with us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Chris and Nick from Live from the Gulag. How's it going, guys?
Going great.
Awesome.
Nick, where are you?
Yeah, oh, we might have lost him.
Good, that's good.
To quote Rodney Dangerfield, we're off to a great stop.
Sorry, please excuse my dumb co-host.
Yeah. Hold on, we might have him back here. Is she breathing? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. My boomer computer can't seem to keep up.
That's fine. We'll blame it on the computer. It's all right.
So this is the second time we've been on another show, and I was the one that didn't have video last time. So, Nick, is this gonna work?
My webcam is plugged in.
Come on, man.
We'll figure it out here. So,
okay. Well, anyway,
while Nick is working through technical difficulties. Chris, I'll put you on the spot here. For anyone who's not familiar with you, what is Live from the Gulag, and where can people find you?
Well, it's a show is kind of has like an old radio show format, kind of like Opie and Anthony, where we just kind of go over current events and talk about whatever we feel like talking about. Me and Nick are both engineers from the University of Texas, and we're good buddies, and we just wanted to start a show, just for the hell of it, because we both kind of wanted to do it. So sometimes we do kind of a special episode on just a topic we want to talk about, but most of the time we just kind of go over the political news from like the week before and riff on it. So you can find us, it's Live from the Gulag. You can find us on Simplecast or on Spotify, Amazon Music, I think iTunes. We're on most of the big platforms. I think we got 26 episodes. That sounds like a lot. So we're having a real good time doing it.
And so pretty much from what I saw, it's about once a week, right? Like that you guys are putting out episodes.
We do the best we can. I mean, we're both working dads, and I mean, we both have young children, and it's hard, man. But we do the best we can. We're hanging on to it. We have a lot of big plans for the future, and we're just hanging in there trying to make inroads. And
awesome. So I don't get like too far down the rabbit hole in terms of like politics and stuff like that, but in terms of the political compass that you guys come at, these kind of like daily stories, what would you say it kind of is?
Well, it's got a libertarian slant. I mean, we're both libertarians, but we don't spend a ton of time sitting there hashing out like the ideology and jerking off and that kind of thing. Like most libertarian podcasts, it's mostly like we'll try to play a clip and then riff on it and maybe just talk about something funny that was happening. Libertarians are going to enjoy the show more than other people will. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Well, that's all right. I mean, anything. Also, if you're not libertarian, I mean, it gives people exposure to kind of like I think the analysis that you guys do or the explanation that you do is really trying to dig into it. It's not like these just kind of cursory, surface level analyses that you guys are doing, right?
Yeah. We give our take on it for sure, and we definitely have a strong like libertarian slant. There's a lot of friends, that we don't tell people about. A lot of people would not like the show just because, I mean, I think conservatives would probably be okay with it, because I mean, these days they seem to have a better sense of humor, but I mean, that could probably change. We have a lot of conservatives in our family, and we live in Texas, so there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that slant, but yeah, if it's if you're kind of if you don't have a good sense of humor, then you're not going to like it.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine Live from the Gulag also probably immediately turns off some of the hard lefties that would normally listen to it.
Yeah, they wouldn't like it. There's friends that I have that I hope they don't ever find out about the show. Just yeah,
there goes dinner plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's kind of like start talking down the road here. So I've already done one episode about 3D printing, and it was kind of like 101, right? Like, what is it? The very basics of kind of how you get started. And so I'm definitely trying to like advance that conversation. And so in kind of our conversations behind the scenes, we were talking about what you do on a daily basis in terms of your like 9 to 5 or whatever, and using something that a lot of folks are using to basically develop their own 3D prints. And so it's essentially 3D modeling software and what we were talking about. So can you kind of just like unpack a little bit like what you do on your day-to-day and the software packages that you're using?
Yeah, so this is pretty exciting too, because I kind of lost hope that there'd be any sort of like carryover between my trade and, you know, the liberty movement. I complained a lot because, you know, if it seemed like with just about every profession, you know, you're a lawyer, you can do like a liberty slant, an educator, if you're a whatever. It seemed like engineering was like the only one where there really was no crossover whatsoever. So I felt like I felt like I had double the work to do, because it wasn't like I could just kind of encompass both of them. So this is very exciting, because what I'm going to talk to you about is CAD, or it's computer aided design. So anybody who goes to engineering school is going to have a little bit of experience in design work. Most of them will. So I'm a mechanical engineer, and then Nick is a petroleum engineer. So he also had some, but mechanical mostly. So I did just a little bit of digging. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the different types of CAD, the top 5 software that's worth looking into if you're interested in doing it. And then just kind of, if you're interested in using CAD, I'm going to give a little talk about what can kind of help you decide which software you would like to buy for like what your application is. So I know mostly we're going to be talking 3D printing, because I know that's the kind of angle you're bringing. That's the down with the man kind of angle that you're bringing. So I'm going to use CAD to help you with that.
Yeah, no, that's
Never
fantastic.
thought that would work.
And the real goal being, I think, like, you know, 3D printing 101, you can essentially take what other people have developed in something like CAD and throw it into slicing software and put it onto your 3D printer. So this is kind of like, you know, going a little bit further up the food chain. So like if you do want to produce your own 3D printed items, you're going to need some kind of modeling software like CAD or something like that. So let's see. Do we have Nick? Nick, do we got you?
Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch my camera button. I figured out every time I try to turn it on, it kicks me out. So
that's okay. One bald guy is good enough, I think.
Yeah, you're not missing much.
It's like the Christmas lights. Like you touch one and they all go out. So like, let's not even think about it here.
It's more fun. I'm jealous. I think everybody should do it.
So I don't know if you were listening, Nick, but Chris gave us kind of like a one-on-one on what your podcast was about, and before he kind of laces into talking about 3D modeling software. From your angle, what would you say you guys kind of like talk about, or the slant that you come at, certain topics from?
Yeah, how'd I do?
Oh, terrible. We are definitely an anime focused and My Little Pony focused podcast. I don't know where he's getting all this other crap from.
God damn, I don't remember any of that. I was drunk. Shit.
It doesn't count if you're drunk at the time.
No, yeah. You know, we're two good buddies. We've got an engineering background, so we think from things from kind of a technical perspective, and like most podcasts, we try to give our touch on current events, but because we went to school together, we're both very libertarian focused. Kind of grew up in the Ron Paul era. Everything's with a libertarian / anarchist slant to it. So that's our niche.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. And so this was also something that kind of happened behind the scenes where me and Chris were talking about, we had kind of like an online debate talking about, relativist morality or objective morality and kind of the merits of that. And has been my way over the last like 6 to 12 months. I've been kind of like going down this rabbit hole that has probably been long overdue in terms of like my research and stuff. And so we didn't get to that. We may still. So like don't like
We have to.
Hold out.
I've had enough talks in the car, or about this whole thing. I do not want to waste all of that. So
yes.
Yeah, I had all of my retorts. I even have all the moments when you go, oh, I hadn't thought about that, just all written out in my mind. So
I think we might be less adversarial than when we first talked, but it's okay. There will still be some things to debate. But all right, so let's kind of get into it here. So someone wants to build whatever, a My Little Pony desk figurine, and they can't download a design or a blueprint from one of the online libraries for their 3D printer. Where can they turn in terms of the software packages that might help them actually design that?
All right, so I thought of 3 categories to consider when you're trying to decide what type of CAD software should I use. So number 1 is the obvious one, and that's the purpose. So what are you trying to do with the CAD software? So different categories you might run into are, layouts of like a floor. If you're trying to do like a house or something, and you're trying to do 2D layouts, if you're trying to do 3D printing, if you're trying to do manufacturing, if you're trying to do engineering, or if you're trying to do graphics. These are just some basic, all of these things are encompassed in CAD. So, so once you figure out what your purpose is, the next one is price. And that's where, fortunately for people listening to this, you're going to be doing 3D printing. So price is actually not going to be that bad. It's if you're trying to do engineering, where you're going to need things like material analysis, and you're going to do simulations, and you're going to do stress. I'm going to kind of briefly talk about that a little bit. So number 2 is price. How much are you willing to drop on this? And at what point do you reach diminishing return with the software you buy? Because you can cut corners, get really crappy software, and just end up wasting your time and then thinking, this sucks. I don't want to, I'm just not cut out for this. That you could kind of do that if you're not careful. So you all I can say is that I recommend you drop a little bit of money, but you're probably not going to need to drop thousands of dollars. So that's the good news. And then the third category is preference. It's so kind of like Apple versus, Windows. There's going to be 2 programs that are basically, you can get the same outcome. Just some people like this one better than this one, and that's really all there is to it. So
fair enough.
Yeah. So based on that, there's 2 main kinds of CAD software. There's CAD software that is used for parametric modeling, and then direct or explicit modeling. And I'm just going to briefly say what the difference is. Parametric modeling is a type of modeling where you start at the base level and you have sketches, 2D sketches, that you use to then turn into a 3D model. And so you have kind of a history where you have what's called design intent, where you can have 2 parts that look exactly the same, but based on how you decided to design them will affect your ability to maybe change something about it. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then the other thing is direct modeling. And that's more, there's no history or anything. Think of it's like clay. And you have a little clay that you're going to mold into the part that you want. And the positive aspect of this is that it's just a lot simpler, and artistic people can really grasp it. That, artistic people don't really need any of the complexity that might come with parametric modeling. But the downside is, if you have direct or explicit modeling, changing things that you did in the past is a little bit more difficult. So you might, you might have to end up starting all over more often, or and you're not concerned with like engineering or manufacturing or anything like that. So
it's like anyone who's ever done any. So the latter is like anyone who's ever done any like pottery, right? Like, and they touch it the wrong way and it just goes to shit, right?
Yeah. So if you're modeling like a face, if you're making Matthew McConaughey's face, odds are you're going to be using Dreamweaver or something like that. And that's going to be direct or explicit modeling. But if you're 3D printing and you're doing any engineering type stuff, I would recommend parametric modeling, because you can also do basically everything you can do in direct or explicit modeling, you could do in parametric modeling. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So anyway, without any further ado, what I'm going to show everybody, what I'm going to kind of demonstrate is the program called SolidWorks. And the reason I use that one is because I'm an engineer and that's what we were trained to do in school. And that's what my company uses. It's really, really good. It's basically the best in the industry. If you're talking about a solid that you can have material applied to it, and you can have manufacturing decisions done with this software. I mean, you can design something. And just real quick, if I just share my screen real quick. Let's see how this works. Share screen.
And just so I'm not leaving Nick out, Nick, is this anything that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I am an engineer, but of a different trade. I started off in petroleum engineering. So Hoffman is leagues ahead of me, or Chris is leagues ahead of me on the 3D design simulator in actual CAD software. I'm more of a novice to where I just bought a 3D printer kit. And I've played around with it. I use a free software called Fusion 360. You can get like a free year trial on it and goof around in it. But for the most part, I'm just taking other people's G codes and printing them out. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm tinkering nearly as much as Chris.
Yeah, I think a lot of people use Fusion, and then they use oh wow, I'm having a senior moment here in terms of the slicing software. There's another one out there that's fairly ubiquitous. Cura, I think Cura is the other one that a lot of folks use in terms of
There's a lot.
Yeah, the slicing software. But yeah, SolidWorks, I've definitely heard of a lot of folks that are building more complex pieces for the 3D printers using something like SolidWorks or one of the higher end CAD versions in order to kind of go crazy with it, especially if it's like a more functioning piece.
Yeah. So just briefly, what I'm kind of showing the viewers right now is kind of you see this, I guess, I don't know what that is, a bracket or something like that, where it's showing what's called a simulation, where you give it a sort of material and then you apply different pressures to the part. And then SolidWorks will then do what's called a finite element analysis, where it will study how that stress is going to affect the part along the entire length of the part. So maybe the red areas are the ones that are displaced the most. And then as you get into orange, it's displaced the least all the way to blue. So the only reason I'm showing you this is because these CAD softwares can get extremely technical and extremely advanced. The listeners are not going to have to buy SolidWorks because they don't need any of this stuff that I'm showing you. It can do a lot. The amount of stuff that SolidWorks can do is just incredible, where, you can talk about making models and you're now calculating fractions of a fraction, thousandths and thousandths of a millimeter precision that you don't need if you're making a 3D print of a dildo or whatever. I mean, you don't need, you don't need to know.
How did you know what my audience was into?
For those of you thinking it was about half of people, I'm sure. But anyway, so let me stop. I'm going to stop sharing that to show you. So, what I'm going to be showing people is stuff that I've done in SolidWorks, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of software. I guess. Well, let me do the types of software first. So the big one that I recommend people look up first is one called Sketchup, and most people probably heard about. That's the one a lot of people heard of because it's really cheap, and you can play around with the free one on a browser to see if you're into it. And from what I understand, if you use SketchUp and you're doing if you're doing things like 2D layouts of houses and stuff, or you're making simple models, so I mean, SketchUp, you can buy different tiers that will let you do different, complexity. But the thing is, the reason I point to SketchUp is because there is the free version. You're not going to find free on any of the CAD software like SolidWorks. Forget it. You're not going to get any free, or AutoCAD. So SketchUp's the first one I want to talk about just briefly. So as far as things like if you're doing a layout or you're doing models of things you can, see plainly, it'll work just fine. And I don't have a whole lot of experience with SketchUp, but I kind of loaded it up, and it's, the interface I think is a little weird just because I've been using SolidWorks my whole career, and so I kind of can't really stand SketchUp. But at the risk of being a snooty, engineer who, my SolidWorks is just way too. I guess that's why I wanted to start by talking about SketchUp. So I'm going to be showing you stuff that I'm doing in SolidWorks, and so if you try to do the things in SketchUp that I'm going to show you and you get like really frustrated, that could be a reason why, is because if you cut corners on the CAD software you're using, it's also going to limit the things that you have the ability to do. So, sure. But they've got like prices and tiers and stuff like that, so you can probably buy a better version. I'm sure they make the free one just crappy and clunky enough so that people want to buy the better one. I would guess. I don't know. Nick, have you used SketchUp?
I have not. Like I said, I'm a novice. I'm mostly at my stage. I'm just taking other people's work and I'm trying to print it.
Did you do any?
Looks like we got a couple of factions in the comments. We got Dorkmo saying, "Give me OpenSCAD or give me death," and then Chairman Juan says, "Solid edge for life."
So I haven't heard of any of these. I mean, yeah. Because in the industry. So I'll just tell you, in the industry I'm in, which is manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So sheet metal and injection molding and die casting, that kind of thing. There's really basically three big names in town. Mm-hmm. You've got AutoCAD, who makes Autodesk Inventor. Mm-hmm. You've got SolidWorks, and you've got Pro-E. Those are the three that you're really going to see. And these programs have features within the actual program that lets you do manufacturing related functions. I mean, to my knowledge, SketchUp probably doesn't have like an injection molding function, although maybe it does. I don't know. But SolidWorks, it has functions specifically just for sheet metal, for example. And you can apply different material properties to it, and it'll help you with the manufacturing process. And I don't have to get into the weeds there, but so anyway, SketchUp would be one to try first, and those are the other ones that I kind of got. So I guess what I can do from here is kind of show you a little bit about
show us where the magic happens. Some
things that I've done personally, because I actually made a very, very dumb decision, long story short, to buy a SolidWorks license. And when it was all said and done, it cost me $5,000. So there was this, I wanted to take a freelance. I wanted to try to become like a SolidWorks design freelancer, where I become like a freelancer in the, because I just wanted to work from home because I loved my job. I thought my job was great. The only problem is I had to drive to the damn office every day. And so I thought, well, if I could do this at home, then that'd be great. So I bought a SolidWorks license because I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start doing that work on my free time. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened, and they sent everybody to work from home because they felt that they had to. Mm. And so immediately I got my wish. It's almost like God thought, well, in order to give Chris what he needs, I have to create this plague to scare everybody and send everybody to work from home. So basically,
it's all your fault.
I may have caused COVID. I'm sorry, everybody. But because of COVID, I've got this awesome, super high-tech SolidWorks license. So I'm going to show everybody a little bit of what you can do.
I used to listen to, who did I used to listen to? There was one podcast that basically prognosticated someone dying, and they felt like that was like they felt like they manifested it, right? Like, so that was what they focused on for a long period of time. So if anyone is pissed off about COVID and the lockouts and stuff, just send Chris all the hate mail.
It was for a good purpose, so I could have my dream. And so thank you everybody who gave their lives so that I could work from home. But anyway, so this is the first thing I'm going to show you. It's just something I made on my free time. So I was saying before that if you have different types of CAD software for graphics, you can do a lot of different things with trying to make things look good on the screen with different shading and things like that. So I've got the actual model right here. So this is where all those pictures came from. It was from this model. And this is what's called an assembly, where it has a lot of different part files inside one assembly. So these were all modeled kind of separately. And you can do different things with mating where you can actually, you know, like operate it from inside the assembly and things like that. So one of the things that I was talking about was parametric, or what was it? Parametric modeling, and so I'm going to show you kind of what that means right now. So if you look in this, so this is a separate part of the wrench. So if I open this up, this is the part file where the design actually happened. And if you look on the left here, you see kind of a history of how it was designed from start to finish. So this is what makes it parametric, the fact that the whole design is actually small design decisions made on top of each other. So I'm just going to go in the past here, just kind of show everybody what this means. And SketchUp is kind of a hybrid between the two. Honestly, if anybody listening has more experience with SketchUp, I didn't see this type of feature. So it might actually be more direct modeling, but maybe if you buy higher tiers. But anyway, so that just real quickly, the design started with, like I said, this 2D sketch where it's just this simple 2D sketch that's then extruded into this 3D model here. And then I do a bunch of different stuff to it. I do a cut here, I slice that, and then here's a kind of a 2D sketch that made that. So this giant 3D model is actually a series of decisions. And if I want to change something at the very beginning, so just to speed through the rest of this is what it looks like at the very end. So if I want to change something, say in the past, like maybe I want to make this hole instead of 0.4 inches, I make it, 0.3 inches. And then I rebuild the whole thing. It goes back and it recalculates everything so that's smaller. So it went into the past, changed that sketch, and then it just recalculates all the things that I did to it. So that's what makes parametric modeling so useful. The downside is you have to be thinking several steps in the future because all of these features build on top of each other. So if you start off not thinking too clearly about where you want to take the design, you might get towards the end of the design and then you want to change something about it and it's impossible to do. And if you want to make a different size of it later on, this is where the manufacturing part kind of comes in, where if you want to make different sizes of the same part, the better the design engineer, the better ability you have to design it with the intent that you're going to have multiple sizes in it. That's so anybody who gets into modeling, and if you want to get into 3D printing, and if you want to get into parametric modeling, part of it is that learning curve. It's making mistakes so that later on you realize you can make the same thing in way fewer steps. So I wanted to show this too. Just another example. I made you awesome. A little, you can make like a trophy or something. So so people can do this too. So this is a real simple, just kind of like, I guess, badge, just a little thin metal piece that you can use for, like a pin or something. I found a sketch of from one of your sites, put the image in here, just sketched all these lines around it. And then I did, so Boss Extrude 1 is the anarchy thing, and then Extrude 2 is the bird. And so there you go. So that's all you got to do. So if you're interested so I could 3D print this for you right now. If somebody, awesome. So if somebody listening to this wants to 3D print this, just reach out and we can do it.
Could you, how do you export that to a G code for like a 3D printer from here?
So it's called an STL file. There's a specific file type that you save it as. And then when you save it as that STL file, you use the software from whatever 3D printer you're printing off of, load the STL file into the software, and then it's going to work out where the part goes on the bed and, how many you're going to print and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think Cura will actually do that. I think you can take that STL file. In fact, most of the slicing software, I think, takes an STL file. Anyone in the comments, if I'm not saying this correctly, then just let me know. But
no, that's been my experience. It'll take it and turn it into the layers it needs for your printer.
Yeah, which is I think there's a couple of software packages out there that offer like 2-in-1, right? So you could do the modeling and the slicing in one. from what I've seen, a lot of folks that use those prefer them to have them separated for one reason or another. I think it's like it's one of those things where I think maybe the offerings that are out there, they do both, like, average to crappy, versus, a piece of modeling software does modeling well, and then the slicing software does the slicing well, and then they would rather have those two, dedicated options for both of those. But yeah, in terms of like what you do on the day to day, do you see, like, how did you get turned on to 3D printing, or how did you get introduced to it? Like, I know you're not necessarily an expert or anything like that, but how did it necessarily come in, and does it get talked about? Like, do your mechie friends talk about 3D printing their own stuff, or what?
Well, it's kind of started to get into the the industry now. So I don't have a whole lot of experience doing 3D printing, to tell you the truth. I've 3D printed a few things, but I've already decided I'm gonna get the Indar 5 Pro, or one of the, I've already figured out which one I want. It's just I'm in the middle of moving, long story short. Yeah. So that's why I don't have it. But another reason I don't have one is because I always kind of thought it would be something that I would buy, and then I wouldn't be able to think of enough things to use it for. And so it would end up being something that I buy, make two, like, whatever, paper holders or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, the next thing I need to make, I'll just make it. And then it'll sit there and I won't ever use it again. So,
yeah.
But things are changing, because the printer technology has gotten just crazy good. And now you can get a really good 3D printer for, a few $100s. Things have really changed now. And now I can tell you, I do have experience doing both SLS and FDM printing, because right now I can tell you just from my experience, I do manufacturing for data centers. And so it's mostly sheet metal and extrusions and some die casting and injection molding. And now we're having the issue where it's very expensive to make prototypes. It's really expensive to make a part, period, out of metal. So if you wanted to make a prototype of a product that goes through all the process of making the metal and punching it and forming it and painting it, and you go through all those steps, and then you have assembly teams that make it, and it has to get, and then it has all of the part number filings and who pays for it. Like, there's a lot of bureaucratic reasons why making prototypes at work is very difficult. But now the engineering team that I work for has realized that if you get a really, really good 3D printer, we can just test our prototypes and skip the entire manufacturing process, and you can 3D print a really good, solid, model that's tough and strong. And, it definitely wouldn't, it's much too expensive to take the place of what you're doing with your real team, but it's a real cheap way to get around that whole process. So that's basically how we've incorporated it into how I work. Is I test my parts with the 3D printed options, because I can do it overnight instead of taking a week or whatever to make. And then I realize it doesn't work, and then it takes an entire other week just to make another one. Yeah, you can 3D print it overnight. You're good.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, the speeds are getting faster too. So like, I think we were talking about kind of the range of options there. Mm-hmm. I would say if you're looking at the 5, I forget if it was 5 Plus or 5 Pro. Ender just came out with the 6. The 6 looks really nice, and I think it's about the same price, or maybe it's a couple of bucks more than what the 5 was. But
I think they're coming out with a 10, aren't they? Don't they have like a 10 coming out?
Yeah, so I was actually looking at the 6.
Okay.
So I might just get the 3 to mess around with first. Like,
is there any strong opinions here on Core XY versus Cartesian printers? Like, I'm pretty sure we're talking about the standard Cartesian printers where the bed moves back and forth around. But I've recently pulled the trigger on a Core XY printer. I don't know if you're familiar with the Voron 2.4.
Well, you went high end. You're actually you're talking.
Yeah, talk to Nick. Talk to Nick, please.
So that's like the Cadillac, right? I mean, like, as far as at home 3D printers go.
Right. The problem is I bought it right when I had a kid, my third kid, and it's been sitting on my desk for a couple months now. I've been meaning to build it. So I've been printerless for like about a year and a half. I used to have a a Creality CR10.
Okay.
And I ended up selling that to a buddy because I got way too busy with work. And now it's like, all right, I'm ready to get back into it. I got a new job during COVID and had another kid. So
Yeah.
I bought the FormBot kit.
You had a COVID baby?
I literally had a COVID baby. But FormBot recently put out the kit that pretty much sourced all the parts you need to build it. And now it's like, as soon as I get a free weekend, whenever that appears, I'm going to build this thing. And I'm really excited. And the big advantage of it that I could tell being a Core XY printer is instead of moving the bed around, which contains a lot of mass, it just moves the print head, the XY plane. So you can print much faster because you've got a lot less weight moving around. And then it just moves the Z plane up a fraction of a millimeter at a time as you print each layer.
If I'm not mistaken, that's actually what the 6 is. So
awesome.
Yeah, so the 6 is an XY core, and so it's a little less expensive. It might be maybe about like 25-30% less than the Voron, but the Voron is like, from everything I've seen, I guess like all of these, you know how like back in the day, I forget how old you guys are, but like, you know how back in the day when like the Intel Pentium chips first started coming out and everyone started like, you know, overclocking their CPUs and stuff like that. There's that kind of movement now happening, it looks like, within the 3D printing space. So like, you know, Benchy, the little boat that's the you know, the calibrating print that you can do. I've seen, you know, they have speed races now to see who can print like an actual decent quality Benchy.
What's the record? Like 15 minutes or something like that?
I don't know what the official one is. The one I saw the other day that had like a ridiculous number of hits on YouTube was like 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Now the Benchy itself was a couple of like, it had some infill problems and some like layering issues, but you know, that's just all a matter of kind of like dialing it in and getting everything, you know, put in. It's going to get to the point where, you know, they'll reach the maximum speed that the actual material can handle, right? Like at a certain point, the material just can't handle it, right? But
you're printing the next layer and the last one hasn't finished cooling yet.
That's exactly what you're fighting. And so they're the same way that people came up with, like, you know, water jacketed towers and things like that when they were, you know, overclocking their PCs. What, you know, now you're starting to get these, like, you know, fan cooled printing beds and like all these other stuff that people are, you know, essentially working out in their garage to try and increase the speed of the print, which is obviously one of the things that is, I wouldn't necessarily call it holding back, but that's the trade-off, right? Like, you know, I could go to Target, or I could go, you know, and get a cheap piece of Chinese printed crap, or I could get something that I print myself. It just takes me whatever, you know, 12, 14 hours or something like that. Sean from 3D Print General coming in, he said, check out Thomas Sinlanderer's Voron build. He's flying at 500 millimeters per second plus, which anyone who's not familiar with 3D printing, 500 millimeters per second plus it's like driving 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah,
like, not even 100. It's like 1,000 miles an hour. It's pretty insane. But yeah, so is it sitting in the box, Nick, or have you actually assembled it?
No, it's sitting in the box, and I'm actually planning on taking it out this weekend.
We suck, man.
My kid is just turned 3 months old, so give me a break.
No, you have a reasonable excuse. That's good. But to your point, Chris, I think, and Nick, you'll probably attest to this because you've had a printer in the past. You'll find things to print. Like, there's stuff to print all over your house, you know?
Yeah, I've got a 3-year-old now, so I've got tons of toys and stuff I can make.
My son's 10. He's like, what can we print from Minecraft? Like, that's the first thing he wants to print, you know?
You know, one of the first things I printed was like a cell phone holder, and I brought it to work, and everyone's like, what is that? Where'd you get that? And then it's like, oh, it's a 3D printer. It's like, oh, what do you use that for? And I have to keep reminding myself I can't say to print guns at work.
Well, what's funny, so like, let's talk about this. So I think we're all kind of in alignment in terms of how we see this, right? But I think the as is the case with new technologies, everyone kind of like runs to the catastrophic dystopian future that's going to result from the technology, right? And so the big baddie is 3D printing firearms. That's what everyone is afraid of, or what these politicians are trying to crack down on. And
They were for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But then they forgot about it because the media stopped talking about it.
We got to ban the thing.
Yeah. The thing. And apparently Joe Biden wipes his own ass. But so I don't know if you saw this today, but I saw that. Yeah. That being said, where do you guys stand? I mean, I'm for full unadulterated, whatever you can make. You can make a machete with a freaking 3D printer. Go ahead. If you can make a an auto or whatever firearm, go ahead. But
all the way up to make nukes. Yeah, totally.
Well, can you 3D print a nuke? Is that possible?
You raised the question, so the answer is yes.
Yeah,
there has to be some way.
Now plastic explosives, that's a given, right? Because plastic.
I don't know if ABS can hold up to those pressures. We'll have to model it in SolidWorks. But yeah, that's the thing. Everyone, it's like the typical sci-fi. Everyone trying to deal with what the new reality is going to look like in the next 10 or 20 years. And I think that's the big fear. But from a libertarian standpoint, I really like it because the majority of what we've talked about up until now is not that, right? It's using it for other purposes. And so when I was talking to Sal last week, the one thing that I said to him, and I don't even know if this term really makes sense, but the idea of it being kind of like a Trojan horse or a very easy glide path to get people into, decentralization and moving away from having to necessarily be stuck in this centralized, centrally governed and regulated world. Is that something that you guys talk about in your circles at all?
Oh, absolutely. And what's fascinating to me about the 3D printed world, it is the game changer. They're going to pass these rules that say you can't go to your store and you can't buy this gun, and it's like, all right, I'll just make it at home, I guess. They're gonna write it down on paper, and I'm just gonna ignore it and do what I want anyways. Home CNC machines, home 3D printers. I want to see more of this stuff. I want to get it better, cheaper, faster, all of the above. This is how you just circumvent the government. Technology will out innovate the laws.
When the goal is to get the conservatives to say, yeah, go ahead and repeal the Second Amendment. We don't care.
What's scary is there will. Well, I don't know. What's scary is the direction that we're heading. I don't know if they would say that facetiously. That's the other elements here is just the amount of kind of ground giving that's happening to the more kind of progressive type of thought patterns and regulations that are out there, right?
Yeah, we're definitely of the camp that conservatism is just the leftism with a speed limit. They're just 20 years behind the opinion of today's progressives.
Yeah, controlled opposition. Yeah.
Super Whip says we need some plutonium filament stat. Here's something just to that point of conversation. Sal actually shared something today, and he talked about it on the program last week. This is a 3D printer that was 3D printed with a 3D printing pen.
Stop. We have to stop, guys. Then the next thing it's going to 3D print is a gun, and it's going to shoot all of us because it doesn't need us anymore. So we need to not. Yeah. So you need to 3D print anything but another 3D printer. They don't need the humans if you do that.
Well, wait.
We are moments away from the singularity.
What if 3D, artificially intelligent 3D printers don't want to print for violence, but because they now know how to reproduce, they just become solely focused on reproducing, and they just start putting big tits on the 3D printers they make. We could be entering into a brave new world here.
That is true. I think it's a little condescending to think that 3D printers would find breasts attractive when maybe they might find something else attractive, like a really big hot tip. No, that's it though. You can't stop the signal. The genie is out of the box, right? And that was my other question was, do you think that as opposed to going after, serializing the actual firearm parts, that the big government's going to big government, right? So what's the next thing? What's the easiest route for them to go to regulate? It's the 3D printers themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, they might require a registry for 3D printers. There's no laws against that. There's no, what are we at? 30th Amendment saying thou shalt not infringe 3D printers. So they could easily regulate the sale of 3D printers. But most of this stuff comes from Alibaba anyways in unmarked boxes. So good luck.
You had a little of a ping there, Chris. You were like, I don't know.
Well, I just don't know, like, if they're even, I don't know if they even know about it. I mean, the technology is probably just way ahead of the politicians at this point. They probably don't even know the things that you can 3D print right now.
True.
Yeah.
They get stuck on their scary words. So they'll say, oh, we need to go after ghost guns. But they don't realize that your average ghost gun to be printed on a 3D printer. So if they say, oh, we need to ban 3D printers, then the layman's like, wait, what? Why? It moves it away from the objective. They need to stay. They need to have some kind of objective that installs fear.
Yeah, I think they basically punted on 3D printing for the moment because they know they just can't. They don't have a grip on it, and so I guess they're just kicking the can down the road, and they're hoping that they'll be dead by the time all of the country bumpkins get all their 3D printed guns. They're like, well, we got to let this thing ride out. I guess I'm 80 years old, so. Yeah.
the other thing, well, yeah, no, that's Pelosi in a nutshell, right? But that the other thing though is maybe they are somewhat banking on the fact that people are lazy, right? So like if we regulate something and you have to go produce it yourself, there will be a handful of us crazies that will go figure out, and tinker and stuff like that. But they're banking on the fact that most normies are just gonna whatever, a 3D printer in my house, no, that's too much work, right? The moment that they try and 3D print something and there's a layer shift, they're like, fuck this, I'm out. As soon as 6 hours of printing goes down the tubes. Right?
I think most likely once 3D printing technology gets so good that it's actually competing with military grade weaponry, that's when the government's going to put their hands on it and just 3D print better than everybody else. And then they don't care if someone in Arkansas is 3D printing a rifle or something like that. And, once they find out that all of the terrorists are 3D printing stuff, they're going to make sure they just 3D print stuff better than the terrorists, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. They're going to give the shitty 3D print. They're going to give the Ender and the, all those printers over to, I guess the Israelis or something, and then they'll give the shittier printers to Al Qaeda.
Not even just like if you're if you're out in in the middle of the Middle East, and you're able to get access to power and a 3D printer, you don't really need to print a 3D a gun because you can probably pick up an AK-47 out of a bin. But more importantly, you can print parts for drones and stuff like that. So there's definitely applications for terrorists to use these for nefarious needs. So there's the government angle to regulate them. We got to stop home printing of drones for terrorism.
Stop 3D printing suicide bomb vests. Yeah. 3D printing like additional wives, whatever else they're going to 3D print. Yeah.
Maybe that is what the promised land is. It's however many 3D printed virgins. Which, by the way, not to miss a beat, my brother chiming in. Someone help! I can't stop printing fleshlight sleeves. We're gonna take down the sex toy market with 3D printing, guaranteed. In all seriousness, so Trey Daniel comes back and says, "I really like to see an easier onboarding for 3D printers. That way, even newbies can get involved." So, Control Pew, who's coming up in a couple of minutes, he actually has like a down and dirty, get into 3D printing as easy as possible, like a step-by-step process. But where have you guys gone to basically find your information? Has it just been YouTube searches, or has there been some other resource that you guys have been tapping?
I have a couple of these things real life called friends, and they kind of they steered me towards my original CR10. And from there,
you have no friends. Air quotes.
Okay.
What,
I
you can
Googled
see
it.
Oh, shit.
Someone on YouTube told me what to do.
Yeah.
But in actuality, like once I got the CR10, it's like, okay, now do I print? And then there's some helpful sites out there. Just if you want to look for something to print right away, you can go to like thingiverse.com. And there's all kinds of G codes out there ready to go, and you can print something cool and show your family and friends. And like, oh, so he's not just a domestic terrorist.
Yeah.
I also print wholesome things like the crucifix and
godly items. Yes, yeah. That's an actually that's an interesting point. So I'm just pulling up Thingiverse in case anyone has not seen this. I think I pulled this up last week too. But there is just tons of stuff that you can 3D print. And the other angle,
crazy.
yeah, the other angle here is that this will keep the environmentalists happy, right? Like PLA and PLA plus.
No, well, nothing will make them happy. Sorry,
well, they'll find something, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they'll find something. But in terms of them attacking the technology, I mean, it'll at least allay that issue because a lot of the PLA is made with kind of like these organic biodegradable type materials, or at least somewhat renewable sources that you're not using petrochemicals to create a lot of this PLA, which is a huge selling point for anyone who's getting into it, especially if they're kind of left of center and more of kind of that environmental type person.
Yeah, well, also the environmentalists, 3D printed houses is the thing that we all need to be keeping an eye on, because that's the thing that everybody, especially with the housing prices being what they are, the desire to 3D print a house is now greater than ever. I think that's going to be the next. I think that's going to be the next breakthrough.
I think somebody did make like a really crappy concrete 3D printed house somewhere. So it's not that much of a joke. I did send a link in the private chat. The first thing I plan on printing once I get this Voron set up is it's a Julius Caesar bust pen holder. So you put all the pens in his back like you're stabbing him. It's pretty cool.
Pen holders.
It sounds like it's also a stress reliever. Is that right?
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta peep this thing. Oh no, it looks awesome, and you could do it in glow in the dark too. Hold on, 1 second. This is like Julius Caesar. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. That looks fun right there.
Yeah. And,
Pack it up, boys. We
did
did
the coolest kid guy in the office if you printed that.
Yeah. It's both educational and recreational. It's good. Well, look, I am totally open for you guys sticking around. We have our next guest sitting in the green room, so if you guys want to hang out, cool. If you have to bounce, that's fine too. I want to say thank you. I appreciate it. I know that this is part of the ecosystem where I think a lot of people think that they have to do this, but we've also kind of made it so that, all right, well, it's not as big, bad, and scary. It's just another skill that you have to get engrossed in and figure out and be able to work with. But again, pulling stuff from Thingiverse and some of those codes that are already out there also means that you don't necessarily have to be the person creating the stuff. You're just essentially printing it at home, which is fantastic.
Right.
So,
yeah, I guess closing thoughts. I would buy just a cheap printer and just start trying to do stuff. That's probably the best way to do it, instead of sitting down and looking up websites to like 3D printing 101, where there's just so much information that you're probably going to shy away from it, I would say.
And the best part about that is you don't have to show anyone your fuck ups. You can just show them your first success.
Yeah. Just hide the trash can that's in the corner. Don't worry about it.
And if you have friends, unlike Nick, go talk to them about it. That would be the best thing, probably.
Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, if you want to stick around, definitely stick around.
It's been fun.
Yeah. I'm going to pull into the conversation here. We got CTRL+Pew joining in. How's it going, brother?
Oh, not too bad, man. Just hanging out.
Awesome.
Wonderfully, thankfully slow Monday, so I'm not losing my mind yet.
Yeah. Yeah, the keyword being yet. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to have you on. If you don't know them, this is Chris and Nick from a podcast called Live from the Gulag.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey. They have some libertarian persuasion, so they're good people. So from that standpoint, I wanted to pull you in, and we're talking, all things 3D printing. We're trying to kind of like move the ball down the road and everything like that. For anyone who's not familiar with you, who are you, and where can they like connect with you or find your information?
Oh boy, so I am that dude from the internet that prints them guns and such. There's a couple of us out here now. We're all blowing our hands off. So, but I'm part of the Deterrence Dispense printing community. One of the admins for that group. We organize and sort of provide an infrastructure to help people test their own designs to get good public testing for the firearms that are in firearms and different systems that are being designed. Get public testing done. Get the final packages that have been verified for all that put together and released and archived in a place where we're only archiving the stuff that's being like fully thoroughly vetted. So, the risk of things not working, you actually blowing your hands off, as long as you can follow the instructions, that risk goes way, way down. So yeah, that's sort of what we're all about. The whole community is organizing now around the catalog. It's thegatalog.com. Everything, all the resources for the community you can find there. And I'm Control Pew, Control Pew everywhere on the internet, and controlpew.com, where we have other resources like announcements for filed releases and really thorough getting started guide.
Awesome. So we were actually just talking about, and for anyone who's interested, again, thegatalog.com is kind of the compendium that is being assembled here. For everyone who is tuning in, who is new, what we were talking about before with Chris and Nick were kind of like the more upstream things, like essentially modeling pieces, brand new pieces that you want to 3D print. Is that something that you're involved with, Control? Like, if you are, what are you using? CAD, some other type of software?
So I'm using SolidWorks. I did get a copy from my old employer for free. So, I still have that key, and they're cool with it. So,
hey, are you gonna help me? Are you gonna help me 3D print this logo I made for Matt? Did you see that?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, if I give it to you, can you print it?
Yeah, I can run off a copy for you.
All right, cool, man.
But
sorry to interrupt, please.
No, you're good.
I think Chris is both happy and sad because I think he paid $5,000 for his copy of SolidWorks.
Oh wow, yeah.
No, I got one for work too.
Yes, SolidWorks is a super expensive program, but it's really, really good. A lot of the sort of existing aerospace tech uses it for a lot of different things. So it's a really good piece of software if you can afford it. Don't leap in thinking you have to have that one. There's a lot of other ones for free. Fusion 360 has a hobbyist license that you can get for free. Instructions for that are at theguide.controlpew.com. If you want to jump straight into CAD, you can go there. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the section. I think it's Learn to CAD or something. Yeah, so Fusion 360 is what we recommend. A lot of the community is centered around that. There's going to be a lot of help when you run into problems, and there's a whole litany of tutorials on YouTube already for it. So,
oh yeah, most definitely. I think anyone who just goes on YouTube and searches for 3D print,
there's
3D printing.
There's so much information on YouTube. It's ridiculous, and I hate it. But
so before we talk about the firearms aspect of it, let's talk about just the nature of 3D printing. How it seems like it's this really easy or nice glide path for people to get into the decentralization movement, maybe with not even knowing that they're in it, right? Like, does it seem that way to you? Because it just seems like, like 3/4 of the stuff on YouTube, first of all, that's, if you put 3D printed firearm, you get demonetized, I think, on YouTube. But
yeah, you get demonetized before you finish typing.
Yes, yeah, which is funny because in setting the episode this evening, specifically for Facebook and Twitter, I had to put in like 5 different variations of how I spelled your name, how I spelled your website, just to see which one would actually get through.
It's really funny. I found out even like it tweets, messages, DMs, anything. If you just type it in Control Pew on a lot of sites, you won't be able to send the message.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so, anyone who does want to, if you're on Twitter, at Control Pew, to kind of keep up to date with these things. But from your standpoint, as far as it being like a nice, easy glide path for folks, like how has that experience been? What brought you to 3D printing?
I mean, I've been in 3D printing forever. I followed it a lot in the early days when it was still an open source project, and you had to find someone on the internet to print you the bits, and then go to the hardware store to buy the other bits and put everything together. And a really crappy printer would cost you $2,000 or $3,000 in the early days. Before you could go to any kind of online store and buy a completed one. So I've been around this tech forever. And I noticed the market trend recently going way down into the consumer levels where you could buy it on a whim as a hobby thing, and just play with it. And so that's what that brought me in on the 3D printing side. I was following DefCAD for a while, with their work with the Liberator in the early days, and then I found the FOSCAD group and another group of like-minded people in there who were like, hey, we're tired of bad prints and files that don't work, because the archives at the time we're just going to collect everything. Yeah. So then we splintered off, and Deterrence Dispense was started to sort of condense all that down. So that's sort of where what brought me to here.
So there's like all kinds of things. Like everyone has a different opinion on machines and filaments and all this other stuff. Obviously, it's certain things work for some people and certain things don't, or based off of the prints that you're trying to do. So one of the questions that I got, and it goes along with one of the comments that we got. So Chairman Juan said, I have 3 printers ranging from $2,000 to $2,000 and still mainly print on my Ender 3. Has that been your experience, or is there some value looking at some of the more higher end 3D printers that are out there?
Yeah, there's certainly some value in it, but you can't spend your way to being a better printer.
That's a hot take. I love that.
There's a certain set of skills that you just have to experience and develop through experience. So things like troubleshooting your prints, right? A clog is going to look the same on a $200 Ender 3 or a $2,000 Raise 2, however you pronounce that company. I'm sorry. A clogged nozzle is going to look the same. So you got to learn how to deal with that. And you may as well deal with it without having to spend an extra $1,800. You know what I mean? Because you're expecting a higher performance, but you may have better luck, but you still need to learn how to deal with that. So that's why we start people on this. We hammer the Ender 3 into people when they first come in. Hey, what printer do I get? Just get an Ender 3. That's it. It's like I said, it's $200 less if you catch it on sale. And you're basically out of the box. You're good enough to print anything on the rack behind me here. All of those come off I'm running Ender 5s now. It's an Ender 3 with a slightly different architecture, but it's the same basic construction. It's a thing that melts stuff and squirts goop onto a plate.
I think those are technical.
You talking about me? Or,
yeah. Well, look, however you get down.
I wasn't listening.
No. So it's all basically it's the same tech. Spend as little money as you can. You might not like printing. There have been, I want to say a couple dozen people, but probably not. I don't know. I'm going to assume that a couple dozen people have gone to my site, read the guide, started printing, and said, "Man, this ain't for me." And they're out $200, maybe, unless they go to Craigslist and resell their printer. And then they get $150 back. So they're only out $50 at the end of the day to learn, to dabble in this hobby that, is I think it's pretty rewarding, but
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of value there, especially if you stick with it. There's frustration to be had. Sean from 3D Print General saying, you can't spend your way to being a better printer. Going to steal that for my next edition of my book.
It's okay. I like him. He can have it.
Yeah. So Sean was on last week. And I love the fact that, you're kind of contributing to, the catalog and this curated piece of content. Like you said, it's not just every single design that goes into it. It's actually kind of vetted designs that are functioning. And Sean took the other end of it. He took the troubleshooting end of the spectrum in terms of putting out content, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, both are huge value. So one of the comments that we got was earlier was basically, who was it? Trey said, I really would like to see an easier onboarding for 3D printers. That way even newbies can get involved. So for someone like myself or Chris, or I think Nick's a little bit, maybe one step higher than a newbie as far as 3D printing, but I think you put out a course recently on Renegade University, right?
Yep, there's a course on Renegade University. It's basically the getting started guide, but in video form. And the big draw for that was, we got to spend a lot of one-on-one time after the course, just talking through different problems and hammering through issues that people in the class were having. So there's a lot of value if you got in up front and were able to get to the class. I think now I would like to see it out for free as like a, come see the site and whatever, sign up and then get access to the course kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's on them. They produced it. So.
Yeah. No. And so was that a course that you had already been doing and they just kind of gave you a new platform to put it on, or was that something that was wholly produced just for them?
No, that was just produced for them. I am probably not going to do one on my own. I just don't have like the bandwidth to sit down and do that. So
Sure.
That and it was a paid course. So that was like the big reason that I was able to sit down and do it, because they were paying me a portion to do that. So
And I guess is Renegade doing the whole like 3D print to fight the man thing too? Was that?
They had a great episode. It was you. It was 3D
Ivan.
Nukes, right? And yeah.
Yep. Me, Ivan, and Jeff Rod, all went on Renegade. Was it Unregistered? Sorry, a lot of podcasts. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the names.
Yeah.
He said it's Monday. I'm not all there. I haven't quite had enough coffee yet. So.
No, it's all good. So from that episode, what did that really focus on? Was that just kind of open-ended, the regulatory environment, or what?
We touched on a lot of regulation, a little bit of the how-to, a little bit of the various projects that were in the works at the time. Liberator 12K is the one that I like to keep pushing out there, because Jeff Rod's one of the OG guys in 3D printing guns, and he's been out here forever working on this Liberator 12K project, and I keep pushing to finish it every time I talk to him, because he's got just a mountain of various designs for shotgun receivers, for 12 gauge receivers, but he's not happy with the test results yet. So, respect that and all, but I keep wanting to push him to release it. So I keep pushing people in his direction every time I get a chance. But yeah, Liberator 12K is Jeff Rod, Ivan Prince Guns, Ivan Alno Handy. He's had a lot of different, he's been banned a lot on all the platforms. He's one of the,
right.
Sorry?
He's doing something right.
Yeah. But he's
lucky.
He's one of the other prodigious developers in Deterrent Suspense in the catalog, working with them to help curate all of this and set a standard for testing and design of these firearms.
Yeah. Is that something that you're constantly having to keep in the back of your mind in terms of the fact that you could end up getting, deplatformed from one of these traditional, Web 2.0 social media platforms?
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've created online, all of my social media accounts, everything else, it's all expendable. It's been expendable from the beginning. That's how I've looked at it. I've got like 4 phones in front of me. So every time I get deleted on an account, I can just go to a new phone, spin up a new VPN, get a new burner phone number, and register a new account just in 2 minutes. Did you
hear that, government? That's why I have 4 phones. I swear.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I got more in the drawer behind me.
Agent Johnson.
Right. One of them is definitely not for the ATF to call me directly, because But...
they're already listening. Don't worry about it.
It's fine.
Do you find yourself biting your tongue as a result of that, or is it something where you're like, you know what? If this is the environment, I'm just gonna speak the truth and do what I'm doing, and then if they have a problem with it, I'm just gonna keep going.
I mean, as far as social media goes, I try not to run afoul of too many things. Like, they get mad at me for spreading links, so I don't spread the link. I'll spread a different link or a QR code, or I'll weasel my way around the rules as much as I can. without getting instantly deleted, because getting instantly deleted doesn't really help the message at all. But again, like I said, I set out on this with the accounts being expendable from the beginning, so I can't. I'm not going to be too mad if they get deleted.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Well, so I want to open it up to you, Chris and Nick, because you're just as new as I am. So whatever questions come to your mind, I'll give you open forum. What do you want to ask Control Pew?
Well, I'm curious. Have you ever had a Fed reach out to you and tell you, "Hey, this catalog site, we don't like it," or have they pretty much been? They're not on. You're not on their radar.
I mean, I know we're on the radar. There have been a couple different full auto tests done on printed frames, and then we've seen messages from the ATF and other agencies about them. So, like, we know they're watching. They haven't asked us for anything directly yet, but they said their eyes are on us. So, whatever.
Have you worked with Defense Distributed at all?
We've worked a little bit together. I know a lot of our stuff is up on DefCAD, which is one of their sites.
Mm-hmm.
So I know they provide a hosting platform for a lot of us.
Okay.
Do you have your own ghost gunner yet, or are you pretty much strictly plastic?
I do have a ghost gunner. I also have like a CNC and a mill and a lathe and some traditional metal stuff. So we're playing with a lot.
For the average Joes in the crowd, a ghost gunner is what?
It's a.
And by average Joes, I mean me.
Right.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked.
Basically, it's a CNC machine that's specifically designed to cut out AR-15 lowers.
Okay.
So it works pretty well in aluminum. Steel is a little hit or miss yet, from what I've heard. So that's basically what if you want to cut AR-15 lowers out, and you want to do it with as little hands-on as possible, that's the tool for you.
Yeah, I've got a back order for the Ghost Gunner 3. I'm hoping to get it by the end of this year. So that's the next realm I'm going to be stepping into after I get my Boron built eventually.
Right on.
And so in terms of that, piece of equipment, how does that differ from, say, like the operation of a 3D printer that's basically just kind of, pushing essentially plastic or some kind of analog through a hot tip? I mean, like, you're now graduating to more of like what, a pressure cutting metal type machine?
Kind of. It's the opposite process. So with the 3D printer, we're adding material to stuff to make larger stuff. Mm-hmm. With the Ghost Gunner, you're taking stuff and you're removing stuff from it. Super scientific. That's the basic gist. So with a Ghost Gunner, you'd start with a polymer 80, and then you'd set it up in the machine. You'd mill out your fire control group. You'd set it up again. You'd mill out your pinholes for your fire control group. I think those are the only two ops. It's been a long time since I've done 80%.
It's two-dimensional, right? So you got to do one plane, turn it, do the next plane.
Yeah.
So it's not a 3D mill where you can just put in an empty, a solid block of aluminum and get what you want. I don't
know that the Ghost Gunner can handle that kind of work. That's
not
large.
For its size. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is meant to, like, it can sit in your house on a table.
Right.
And, it's not a massive piece of machinery that would be a 3D mill.
Yeah, you could conceivably do this without like waking your neighbors in a small apartment or something. So
hey guys, I gotta step out. Just sorry to interrupt. I gotta step out. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks for the invite. I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Check out Live from the Gulag. Adios.
Yeah. So I'm trying to pull up. The Ghost Gunner here. So you're saying it's like it's essentially a tabletop, almost like
it's a desktop
negative printer.
Right, a desktop micro CNC machine.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when you're printing the lower, you're essentially are you printing one full piece, or are you now printing like two halves that now have to be married together?
Say
So
printer.
on,
Go ahead.
on the Ghost Gunner, you have your polymer 80, your 80% lower AR-15 receiver, so an incomplete firearm. And it's going to do two operations. On the first one, it's going to mill out the fire control group, and then it's going to mill out the pinholes for the fire control group. So you're removing material from that original piece in order to get your final firearm.
Right.
Okay.
So 80% of the work has essentially been done for you, and you're doing the last 20%. So it's wrong to call it a printer, because all you're doing is removing the material that hasn't been removed yet.
And so, what's the performance like for something like that versus, say, like a PLA plus printed lower?
I mean, well, working with aluminum, your lower, as long as you do it properly, is going to be more durable. It's also going to be more expensive. So your 80% lower out of the gate is $100 from some company that may or may not be regulated in the near future. To the Ghost Gunner itself, $3,500.
No, they're about, the new ones are about 2,100.
Are they 2,100? Okay,
A long lead time.
still, $2,200. You have one AR-15. Now it's only $100 plus parts for every AR-15 after that, but you're still that's still a hefty investment for. I'm a hobbyist and just want to play with this in my part time or spare time, the weekends or whatever.
If you're a politician listening, there's much more efficient ways to make an AR-15 than to wait for a Ghost Gunner, spend all the money, and then build out your unfinished receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please ignore it.
It's completely impractical. So, is there a production model 3D printed firearm that's on the market right now?
I don't think so. No. It's not. I know the material itself is not like, okay, we're working with plastic goop that squirts out of a nozzle, right? It's not designed to make the most durable firearms. We have firearms that will last several thousand rounds. We've had multiple reports back from the community where they've hit 1,000 rounds and then they stop counting because, well, I mean, we're all cheap and ammo is expensive. So, at 1,000 rounds, you're like, okay, well, this one works, so I'm just going to put it on the shelf, and I don't need it anymore for the moment. But it's flux braces are printed. Flux braces are not printed. They are injection molded.
I do have a kind of a new realm. So there's all the new polymer ammo coming out. All that is probably injection molded casings, but is there any work being done on 3D printed casings?
We're doing a lot of work on that. That's part of the But What About Ammo project. So the But What About Ammo project consists of your projectile, your powder, and casing, primer, cartridge, the whole assembly that then dutes into a gun that you can shoot, that you can make at home without blowing your hands off or burning down your house. So that's a relatively substantial chemistry problem that gets solved before we figure out the cases, and that's still where we're kind of at, figure out the powder and the primer compounds. But there are people playing with it. I know, like I said, Jeff Rod has done work with 12 gauge stuff, printing 12 gauge shells, and there are some other designs being played with. But yeah, there's a lot in the works that we're just really not. We haven't done enough work with it and had enough success with it to talk about it really openly and say, yeah, that's the thing. But
I'm assuming those cases are what, single use?
For polymers, I don't. It's gonna depend on the polymer.
It depends on how it deforms. So if it can withstand the pressure and then go back to its original shape, I imagine there's potential for reuse.
Yeah, I would imagine commercial grade is commercially available stuff, or stuff that's going to be commercially available in the very near future, will be single use, just because there isn't enough time testing that particular polymer blend for any company to say, yeah, you can use it twice. Whereas brass cartridges have been around for 100 years now.
Yeah, and depending on liability issues and stuff like that, I could see that in terms of reuse. Is that something where I think the holy grail is what 3D fully 3D printed or essentially on demand manufactured firearm and ammunition, right? Like at
Yep.
home without having to go through a regulated. How close are we to that? Like, I mean, obviously you don't know the exact date or anything like that unless you're
Tomorrow, no.
but
I don't know, man. It's the landscape is constantly changing. There's a constant pool of new talent coming in, and people getting, people leaving and getting tired and not wanting to continue. So there's a constant turnover in people and talent and knowledge and skill. So I mean, someone could have the breakthrough tomorrow and get us to smokeless powder that you can DIY at home, without and stick with it long enough to provide, the whole chemistry stack, the equipment stack behind that, and then the whole, how do I put it? The verified test results to prove that you can do this at home without burning your house down, with enough instruction to coach someone through it without burning their house down or blowing their hands off.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that we could have that breakthrough tomorrow with some new talent that comes in. We could have it in 5 years. We have no idea. There's so much skill that so much variability and skill with people coming in. So
yeah.
So,
So
go ahead.
Nick.
I was gonna say that if the timeline's correct, is the first step figuring out maybe the casing, and then you still use commercial primers and bullets and powder. And then
that's
go from
one
there.
way you could do it. Yeah. You could start with primers and powders. The problem is primers and powders are
That's like the rate limiting step right now, right?
well, that's the harder step. That's the because I would the way I think about it, once you have your powder, your primer, and your cartridge together, then it's just a matter of pressures, which is a physics problem, which you can deal with kind of easily. It's easier to deal with that than the chemistry problem of making your powder. So that's where we push people who are interested, who have a chemistry background, to start there, and then provide the community with a powder, and then the community can take that and do the physics around it, and then come up with a cartridge, projectile, and everything else for it.
Awesome. What other projects are you working on right now that you think are going to kind of like is it just individual versions of pieces, or is there something else that you're working on that's kind of like outside of the box that's not necessarily just kind of an iterative step?
We got some early R&D on like locking actions going on. Most everything we've done up until now has been based around a blowback system. So it's where your bolt sits flush against the end of the barrel, holds the round in it, and then when the round goes off, it just the force of that the gas pressure just blows the cartridge back, and then everything resets. So there's no locking action, whereas like an AR-15, I don't know how familiar you guys are with firearms. The AR-15 has these little teeth on the bolt head that go into a collar on the barrel and twist to lock into place. So that provides the initial resistance to that bolt coming open as the gases are venting out the barrel. And so, I mean, we're working on some early locking actions. We're trying to figure out that end of things. Single shot, various single shot firearms, playing with different cartridges and calibers, seeing what the materials we have on hand, what we can work with our current sort of technology stack, seeing what's adaptable. So, like I said, we had the FGC9, the Mark 1 and Mark 2, the AP9s. They're all blowback designs based in 9mm. That gave us some technology iterations around ECM and how to deal with how to sort of corrode metal in very specific ways to make features we want. So again, there's a lot of stuff in very early R&D, so it'll be a year or two out before something like that comes public for people to test, I think.
Yeah.
That's got to be challenging, because I imagine like when you're dealing with a locking bolt, that always has to be metal on metal. That's pressure bearing.
It's not easy.
So are y'all working with plastic locking mechanisms? Is that the idea?
There is some plastic, there's some metal, there's some hybrid designs going on. It's really anything goes. I mean, we sort of hit an initial peak with the FGC9 and the 9mm stuff. And they're just straight blowback designs, and so now we're sort of in that downward sort of valley between the next iteration, where we start to see, you know, we're everything's on the board right now. We're playing with every design, every combination of materials, just seeing what works.
And as far as the demand for the actual end piece, I think there's actually a good sweet spot right now where you can get essentially, like half to 3/4 of a firearm in pieces and 3D print the remaining piece. So I'm wondering how that's going to affect demand down the line. Like, not that I would ever want it, but it almost seems like maybe, to advance things and make it in higher demand other than just hobbyists, you would need some level of regulation to kind of drive that demand. Because, I mean, as it is right now, I mean, depending on the state you're in, but I mean, most states you can order, depending on what the regulated piece is, you can order the fire control, the upper, and you just basically have to print the lower in order to, put together a handgun or even an AR, right?
Right. Yeah, I think, so federally speaking, the receiver is the regulated component. So in the AR-15, that's your lower. Most all of the stuff back here on the wall, I know it's out of focus, but the lowers are all printed, or what would be considered the lower receivers all printed on all of these. So that's been the primary focus for these part kit guns that we come up with is, let's eliminate the regulated component. Let's utilize these parts that are on the market.
Yep.
Or, people who are manufacturing new parts, case of the Mac 11 right there. People are manufacturing those parts new already. So we designed a frame to use them because there wasn't anything for them now except for people making Mac 11s or M11s. So things like that. I mean, the Glock parts you see all the time, in our gun printing feeds, people doing various prints with those. So it's, we're trying to use what's out there. Using what's out there generates interest in the broader community, brings people in, lets them get started with a design that's fairly well known and understood and easy to put together. And then hopefully they stick around and they learn to CAD and start doing some of their own development and make something cool. And they're like, oh, hey, this is really neat. Let me keep doing this. And then one of them eventually comes up with a cool locking action that works. And we use that for the FGC 915 or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know if Sean shared, Sean from 3D Print General has an episode where he went to the Bear Arms and Bitcoin event. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were in any of those pictures. I don't know if you went.
Yeah. I think we provided most of the guns he was shooting.
Yeah. The variety was absolutely incredible. I mean, from just really novel, kind of like out of the box, thinking to just taking, what already exists and adapting the technology to it. What was something that stuck out to you in terms of, it sounds like you had knowledge of all of those different ones. The one that stuck out to me was, I forget his name. It's kind of a comedic, trollish kind of name, but the one with the belt-fed handgun.
Suckboy Tony.
Yeah, Suckboy Tony. I mean, was that one of the ones that was like the most out of the box, or what kind of like stuck out to you?
That one was a little wild. I like what he's doing. There are some drawbacks with that belt that I'm not particularly happy about, but I mean, it's innovation, and I don't know. I like innovation. It's innovation for the sake of innovation, and I can dig it. No, my favorite one. There's a kid named Evan Jones, who is doing a flywheel delayed 4570.
Oh, you're gonna have to explain that to me.
So
is that like a flintlock with a flywheel?
So there's it's a cartridge called 4570. It's a huge. Actually, let me just
4570 government, right? Like for lever actions.
Yep, kind of. Let me let me throw this on my screen over here.
This was like the 50 BMG back when we were fighting Indians.
Desktop. There it is. Okay, so this thing right here is 4570. Now, this one on the right.
Wow.
So it's large. So he's got that. He's got it inside a 3D printed upper and lower with a metal barrel that you ECM and a bolt that you can cut off of, common stock. And he's got this geared up to a flywheel somehow in the stock of this rifle, and he's using the mass of the flywheel and its spin up time to slow the opening of the bolt to a safe velocity, so it doesn't fly out the back and kill you. It's a mad contraption, and it's just an awesome design, and I hope to God he's able to finish it, because it's gonna be wild.
That sounds fascinating. So is it just a heavy steel flywheel behind the bolt?
Basically, there's some gearing in there too, but like it's just I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I've seen the insides and I understand kind of how it works, but I don't have the vocabulary to explain it. It's art, and I love it, and it's madness, and props to this kid. So
it's like a momentum delayed blowback.
Yeah. He's got a YouTube channel. I don't know what it is offhand, but it's a good watch.
That's cool.
Yeah,
he was down at Bear Arms and Bitcoin. He came down, and we spent a little bit of time Googling his rifle. But yeah, Suckboy Tony is doing crazy stuff with black powder and electronic ignition. And then he's got that the Glock belt thing.
I am waiting for it. I love the fact that there was a shooting competition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for like a mainstream 3D printed firearm shooting competition, right? Like long range, or even speed, or something like that. I mean, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I don't try and get too political. Like, I want to focus more on obviously the execution of some of these things and how to get people introduced to them, right? But the philosophy, or the philosophical aspect to this, is absolutely fantastic, because there's no truer of a representation of the free market taking root and allowing people like yourself and all of these other folks to innovate in a realm where it's been a completely overly regulated industry for a long period of time. And so, yeah, some of this stuff is like bonkers crazy, but it's also beautiful and amazing from the standpoint of the fact that, like, now you actually have like a crowdsourced think tank that is putting all of this stuff to the test and finding, I mean, like, it's just the idea of like, well, maybe a gun doesn't necessarily need to look like the firearms that we're used to looking like. Like, right. Samuel Colt did not have a monopoly on good ideas as far as firearms, right? Like, am I off base on that?
No, not at all. The only thing that prevents people from dipping into the firearms that don't look like firearms is the any other weapon category of the National Firearms Act. So they say if it doesn't look like a gun, then you have to pay them a tax, which is unconstitutional under a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah. Pick away. Yeah.
Right.
It's their get out of jail free card if they don't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah. Which way do you lean? I mean, like, do you necessarily have a political persuasion, or are you doing this just kind of out of, personal curiosity?
I myself lean pretty heavily minarchist at the moment. I've been in the minarchist sort of space, I guess, for I think I left the army, and I've been sort of trending towards minarchist, slowly towards anarchist. We'll see. Yeah. I don't know.
That pipeline seems to have been accelerated quite a lot by COVID. I'll tell you that much.
Most people hop out and hit anarchy pretty quick. I've been in this space for like 2 or 3 years, just sort of comfortably minarchist, I guess. I don't know. I think we have too much government. I think there's a point where there's a perfect amount of government, and I think that's teeny tiny. But yeah.
That's fine. I look. It's part of also my intent is to show the cross section of folks that are doing things like this, and it's not all just 3D printing firearms. It's
Right.
Growing your own food. It's homesteading. It's crypto and things like that. And it comes from a wide spectrum of political flavors and persuasions and points of view, and people do it for different reasons. Like there are tons of left people that 3D print. They might not be printing firearms, but they're
A lot of them are.
Oh yeah, well some of them are. Yeah, it's actually surprising how many of them are kind of like coming at it from that angle. But yeah, it's really incredible how a lot of people come at this idea of taking personal control of your life or your means of living from different walks of life and from different perspectives. So I love that aspect of it. If someone was looking to get involved in it, say they are a complete novice, they have absolutely no clue what the hell they're doing, okay, what would you say is like the first 1 or 2 steps that they should really do in order to kind of at least begin exploring it, if not kind of like try their hand at 3D printing?
Start. I think it was said earlier when I was in the green room, but I forget who said it. Just start. Just buy a printer and begin.
Yeah.
I'll say we did a pretty fair job as a community condensing down the getting started to buy an Ender 3, get some eSun PLA Plus, and just start printing. Go to Thingiverse, download some stuff, and go. And then work your way through the guide. We talk about calibrating a printer. We talk about fine tuning it to do the dimensional tolerances that we require for this stuff back here. We talk about how to troubleshoot your printer. We talk about upgrades for your printer to get better, more consistent results. We talk about learning CAD. So it's I say it's like 100 steps, but you get through them pretty quick. It'll take about a month, and then you'll be printing at a level that you need to print just anything you want. Anything you want.
So Nick has a Voron. That
Okay.
He has. It's kind of sacrilegious. It's sitting in a box, but he has a young kid, so he has an excuse. So have you been paying attention to kind of like these speed trials of making the fastest benchy? Have you been watching this?
I have. Some of them are pretty atrocious.
Yeah.
I think I saw, was it CNC Kitchen's 10-minute benchy?
Okay.
And it was just it was warped and everything was out of alignment. It was mad. Anyway,
I forget who did it. It was on a Voron. 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
okay.
And now that being said, the smokestack was not exactly well formed, and there was definitely some
Right.
fill issues and stuff like that. But just the fact that you can 3D print something like that in 5 minutes and 40 seconds is
Right.
it's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing.
Now you brought up a good point, and I want to say this here.
Yep.
When you get up to this point where you're gonna print some of these things, read the readmes, please. I promise. I beg you, read the readmes. Read the guide. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in each file package, we have readmes with instructions on how to print some of these things, right? If your Glocks are getting done in 6 hours, you're doing it badly and it's going to break.
Okay.
It's actually a problem. Don't do it. It should take around 20 hours to a day and a half. So just swallow that pill and embrace that it's going to take a minute.
Yeah.
Are you printing these at 100% fill?
Yeah, 100% fill, 8 shells or walls or perimeters.
Makes sense.
Whatever your slicing software comes up with. But yeah, 8 walls, 100%, 8 top and bottom.
So Internet Pizza is saying, check out the HevOrt. That thing is insane. I'm pulling it up right now. 800 millimeters per second. Is this right?
Oh yeah, because it's Core XY. So that's or wait, is it Core XY?
It looks like it.
Yeah, and the z-axis looks like it
Yeah,
goes
it looks
down
like-
as you print.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
looks
it'll do it.
Yeah.
I don't I want to play with it. I don't know how much this costs though.
It looked like it was like 3,500 or something like that out of the
ouch.
box. So without any upgrades, yeah. I mean, it's rough, but I mean, like, look, if you
So-
got that money to blow, I mean, you know,
Right,
have fun.
you can spend $3,500 and print one Glock every day,
Yeah.
or you can spend $3,500 and print 14 Glocks every day.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
I mean, just saying.
Yeah. So the other thing that we talked about last week was, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, Nick, but resin printing. Have you messed around with resin printing at all?
Yeah, I've got. I just picked up my second resin printer today. We're we're playing a little bit more.
Okay. And what are the merits of it? Is it faster? What is the quality of the actual print that comes out of it? Is it more durable? Like, what are the selling points for it?
It looks pretty. I mean, if
you can print clear things.
Right, you can print clear things. You can put LEDs in it and make it all shiny and pretty and cool. Yeah, it's. I mean, there are some things that are just better with resin printing. Detailed surfaces, for example, are really good. Translucent materials are really good. If you have, I know, Vin, one of our other developers, brought out I think an ASP, a pistol with like a window for the mag. So you get 3D, you could resin print that window and put it in there. People have played with some structural stuff. It's not really great yet. There are developments being made all the time, but like dimensionally speaking, they're not the cheap ones anyway are not super accurate.
Yeah.
Then there's a couple different kinds of printer that are available for resins, and each one has their pros and their cons. There's like $3,000 to $4,000 ones that use a laser to draw a UV laser to draw your design on each layer, and those take as long as an FDM printer, but you get really high resolution, high detail, high tolerance. You can dial those in really well. There's other ones that use an LCD screen on the bottom of the resin tank to just sort of zap the resin into the design you want and move it up every level. And those will print faster than your FDM printers, but they're less dimensionally accurate than the previously mentioned laser resin printers. So you're trading off a lot, and the material at the end of the day is still not as durable as PLA+. So your mileage may vary. I know people have had successful prints with Glock 26s. That's the smallest of the Glock, and you can print that on the most cheapest, the cheapest of the resin printers, I believe.
Yeah.
I guess the Mono X from Anycubic. It's just a tiny printer. And people have had success with that, and people have had critical failures with that. So, and it's not like a critical failure like the thing exploded; it just sort of cracked and flopped over.
Yeah.
So,
which I would say, anyone who's going to go down that route, if you are going to go the printing all of the fun things on the wall route, okay, you have to test what you're actually putting out there. And on top of that, if you're printing something, make sure you understand what a good print looks like. Don't just print something and expect it to actually be functional. There are certain, which is why I'm glad we had Sean on last week, is because be able to identify those things that constitute either a defective or at least a suboptimal print. When you actually get the final product off of the print plate. So
yeah, and this is another skill that you just can't buy coming in. You have to look and study that, which is why, again, the $200 printer.
Yes, yeah. I make your mistakes little, right? And if you do get to the point of all the fun things, make sure you're being safe. One of my favorite channels, I would love to get him on here. He will be in face mask if he does get on here, is Print, Shoot, Repeat. Because typically when he's doing his tests, he's he does his tests sometimes from a distance. Other times he's doing the old one hand look away technique. Which, yes, exactly. But yeah, I think that is also it needs to be said, is like, if you're doing this stuff, you have to do it safely. Obviously you're doing things that you're supposed to be doing it on your own and taking personal accountability for it. So like, act as if, right? Like, don't just half-ass this, like you were saying. if it's meant to take 20 hours to print, like, don't think that you can up the speed and print it in 15 hours and then expect to have something that's, decent. And the guides are really extensive. I think what you're putting out on the catalog, I mean, some of them are, 100, 200, 300 pages, but they're worth every single page because each one of those pages is an important piece of that build that if there is a failure could end up in something bad happening. So I
can't put it much better than that.
Yeah, I mean, like, full disclaimer, like, I'm not an attorney, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But so from that standpoint, like, let me ask you about just the overall community itself. I mean, what's the makeup? Is it extremely diverse? Is it mostly like, what everyone thinks it is, like young nerdy white kids in their basement? Like, what is the community like in terms of the 3D printing crew that's out there?
We get a lot of everybody. So there are a lot of young nerdy white kids. We have a couple like actual like aerospace engineers. We have, not to like virtue signal, we have trans people, gay people, straight people, black, brown, white people. Everyone's here. And we set this up very intentionally in the very early days. We have a huge welcome page that lists all the terms of use for the community, I guess. But we're very clear about we're here for the guns. Everything else can fuck off. So we don't care about your politics, anything, personal bias, religion, whatever. If you're coming here because you're interested in firearms, you're interested in making firearms, you're interested in 3D printing firearms, perfect.
Yeah.
Enjoy. We've had a lot of people removed for, coming in saying, hey, join me at the rally. Like, nope, bing. I mean, I'm sorry. That's not why we're here. That's we're just here for the guns. We don't care about anything else. Yeah. Let's advance the armament of the people, because that sounds very communist, but whatever.
Well, this is an interesting conversation that Nick, I'm sure you'd be happy to chime into. So the basis of socialist or Marxist communist thinking is controlling the means of production. Right? Like, does it get any purer to controlling the means of production than 3D printing?
Comrades, I have to say.
Right? Like, I mean, is this being overlooked by people of a certain persuasion where you could be like, look, this is like, this is the ultimate means of self-determination, is being able to, download something and make something for yourself as opposed to, having to kowtow to a corporation or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it could be. I don't know. I don't delve much into the political bent of things, but I mean, I suppose there's an argument for it.
Yeah.
If that's communism, sign me up. But
right?
For me, it's all about the guns.
I can tell you, like, there's I don't know if both of you are familiar with Magnus Panvidia, but the Boog Boy that was on a lot of the national TV because he did the speech on the State House steps in Michigan. But he is more from a left libertarian or left anarchist slant. And there is common ground. Like it gets overlooked a lot, but there is common ground, and a lot of purist, communists definitely still appreciate the ownership of firearms. That's for sure. And so from that standpoint, there is some overlap, which, again, I'm trying not to get too political, but, there is definitely some philosophical or theoretical, commonality there in terms of those populations. But so, yeah. But look, anything else that you have coming up, Control P, like any other launches, any kind of drops or anything like that, or things that you want people to pay attention
to? There's a lot going on. I know Ivan's cooking up the Set Me. So Set Me Parts Kits 308. That's in beta now, to be released soon. We don't usually put dates on this stuff because testing. What else? There's a 3011. There's Jesus. I try to keep track of the beta program with just the number of things that are in beta, and I can't. Last time I looked, there were like 30 projects in beta, and I just gave up. I can't remember all of these. So 30 projects, all in various timelines. Some may never be released. Most are going to come out at some point in the very near future. If you want to know more about that, go to thegatalog.com, join the team chat, and sign up for an account there. Come partake.
That's Set Me with a C, correct?
Right. Set Me with a C.
That's awesome. 300 projects. That's incredible. I would have thought it was like 4 or 5, but I mean you have an entire community that's
Did I say
basically
300?
putting this stuff to. Well, did you say 300? How many did you say?
I think 30? I said 30.
30.
Oh God.
Now I'm in wishful thinking mode.
Right.
30 still is a lot.
30, whatever. It's only a 0. Yeah. So, FDM9 Internet Pizza says, that's gonna be a fun one. It's, if you remember from the early 2000s, late 90s, Magpul came out with a FMG9. It might have been 2010. FMG9. It was a little Glock-looking pistol that like you hit a button and it looked like a little lunchbox, and you hit a button and it folded out into like a short rifle. So we're working on a printable one on that. Bullpup Glock. Back, other hand, back there, right there on the shelf.
That was one of the firearms from the Bear Arms and Bitcoin event. Was also really interesting.
I was a little angry about that because they made me take the brace off.
Yeah.
So it wasn't functioning properly. So it would jam every round because it would just flip back just because of the physics of how the Glock operates.
Yeah, but, and you would think it would be awkward because you've basically taken essentially the handle and the fire mechanism and kind of like changed their placement. But no, it looked fun. It looked fun as hell.
Oh no, it's fun. It looks absurd and it is awkward as hell. but it's awkward, but it's also fun. So you got to balance those out, and then you know the files are free. So if you have a Glock 17L or 34, you can print one soon. We're doing the early alpha for that on my Discord server with my team there. It'll move to beta on the general server as soon as it's ready for general consumption. But I've got some nice slow-mo footage from the range last weekend on it, so that'll be coming up on my socials soon. Awesome. Everyone loves slow-mo. What the hell? What else?
Can people get to the Discord from controlpew.com? Can they find
the Discord is members only. It's through my Subscribe Star, so you have to join at the $15 tier, the CAD Gang, to get access to that room, that space. Okay. I don't recommend joining that if you're just trying to like get files and print, because they're not final files. They're not ready for like distribution, and if you have no idea what you're doing with them, you may actually injure yourself. So get some skills, join if you want to like contribute to the party. Otherwise just be patient. You'll get them eventually. It'll all come out for free.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did have one question. I know we talked about resin, but I don't know if Cymorg said I'm late. Any updates on the resin print experimenting? I guess you had touched on it really quickly. Was there anything else in resin that you were messing around with?
No, I'll just condense it here. Like resin as a whole is generally suboptimal performance compared to FDM printing. It's also more expensive to get into to get a printer that's large enough to print the fun stuff that we're doing. Most of the stuff. So if you want to play with it, be prepared to spend a couple $1,000 on your printer, and then you may or may not have good success. We don't really know. It's still an open field that a lot of people haven't messed with. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else coming down the pike?
It's really funny that you mentioned that. I can't show it to you on stream though, because I would have to handle it, and that's against the YouTube policies.
Yeah.
I tell you what, let me cut off my camera here real quick.
We can pantomime.
Right. Well, it goes on your shoulder.
Okay.
And goes thump. More of a thwomp. If you is that enough of a hand? Chat.
A little bit. I think we need a sound effect example if you can work it out, but only if you can. If it's not too much. But no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I have no trouble getting myself in trouble, but
Right.
Simon saying thwomp and grind. So no, I want to be respectful of your time, and we're going on 2 hours here, especially with Chris and Nick heading us off. But look, Nick, any final questions for Control Pew?
No, I think you've covered a lot of your bases. I'm a bit of a fan. I first found out about you through the Unregistered podcast and immediately subscribed to you. So
Right on. Appreciate it.
It was exciting to be able to be in the same chat room as you.
Awesome. Look, I want to say thank you to both of you. I appreciate the time that you took. It is such a broad world. We're going to continue to come back to this. So, as things drop, I would be more than happy to kind of revisit this and continue to update everyone on what's happening. Really the ultimate goal is to get folks the skills, not necessarily that they have to part from the centralized world that we live in, but at least the skills so that if they have to, they have that opportunity to do things on their own as opposed to having to deal with, centralized regulation or centralized supply chains and whatnot. So definitely, I appreciate you coming on. Any final notes, Control Pew? Anything else that you got going?
No, just thanks for having me on. If your audience is interested in getting started, again, theguide.controlpew.com. I own just about every iteration of that name, so type in whatever you feel like typing and you'll get there probably. Most of the social media stuff ban the word Control Pew, so share it how you can. Spread the word around. And again, Ender 3, $200 on Amazon. We recommend the Pro.
Can't go wrong. Or
add to cart, check out.
Do you happen to know Sal the Agorist?
I do.
Okay, yeah. Sal also has the Ender 3 on 3dprintergoburr.com. So if you want to buy in crypto, that's also another option.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely check out the Ender 3. And to quote our earlier conversation, you just got to start, man. Like just figure it out. Tinker around. Don't be afraid to boomer it, and make any mistakes. Like it'll work out. Don't worry, it'll be okay.
Just pull the trigger.
Yeah. So with that, we will be back next week at 7 p.m. on Monday with another Ungovernable. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.